The Dallas Cowboys are a football team, and they've got really rich owners, like any football team.
Yeah.
And so the rich owners get the really nice suite where, free food.
Hello, yeah.
And they're not giving them like just lame-o food. It's like the best food, and they got really good seats, best, really good view.
Mm-hmm.
And they just invite people to go hang out. So.
And they're not inviting Brian.
I'm waiting. I'd like to go.
Powerful.
Hey, Jerry Jones, if you're listening.
And they got a lot of room in there. And so I'd imagine everybody gets to pick somebody they want to invite,
Yeah.
And so somebody, I don't know, someone in the family invited George W. Bush, former president, and former First Lady Laura Bush.
Okay.
Why not? They're in Texas.
Yeah,
Right.
that's cool.
Makes sense.
W loves some football.
I'm sure he does.
And then somebody else in the family was like, hey, Ellen DeGeneres, she's funny. Let's invite her and her wife, Portia. And then this picture goes viral where right next to each other, Ellen DeGeneres and George W. Bush smiling and laughing, having a great time at the football game.
Oh, I bet they did.
The internet pretty much came unglued
Yeah.
and lost its mind. There was a great piece describing this in The Plain Dealer from Philip Morris. It says, Ellen DeGeneres instantly faced heavy criticism on social media when video emerged Sunday of her sitting next to former President George W. Bush at a Dallas Cowboys football game. Twitter trolls leapt at the chance to spew venom at the talk show host for sharing a luxury suite with George and Laura Bush and confirming that she and the former president are friends.
What?
Oh, the humanity. A filmmaker named Josh Fox weighed in with the following vitriol on social media. Quote, hey, at Ellen Show, that's Ellen DeGeneres on Twitter. How does it feel to watch a game with a mass-murdering genocidal war criminal?
Wow.
1 minute, the daytime talk show host and comedian is noshing on nachos and enjoying a football game with Bush. The next minute, DeGeneres is being brutally slammed on social media for having the audacity to hang out with the former president.
You know what we're about to do? We're about to get real. We're about to have conversations that Christians have behind closed doors. The scary ones. The ones that make you feel uncomfortable, that's where we're going. Why? Because we're family. Ustedes son mi familia.
So this is the Brian and Janelle podcast. She's Janelle and I'm Brian. If you don't want to miss anything, all you have to do is just hit that subscribe button to get a notification whenever we drop a new episode. This is the Brian and Janelle podcast. So if you've been in the family for a while here at Moody Radio, you know what we're all about. We want to help you take the next step in your walk with Christ, whatever that next step may be, by looking at today's issues from a biblical perspective.
Right.
And you know that on this show, we love Romans 12:2. Why? Because Romans 12:2 indicates that we're to let God transform us into a new person by changing the way we think. So we love to do that by taking, whatever's happening in the world, viral news story, trending topic, issue impacting lots of people, and pick it up and look at it through the lens of the gospel.
Right.
You can see the gospel everywhere. And I think we can learn gospel lessons everywhere. But sometimes they come from unlikely places. And that's the case, I think, in a viral news story that I didn't know we would talk about until this morning. And Janelle, you had some good ideas about it.
Yeah, I was glad that Ron had shared it, and it made me really think and reflect on my attitude.
Yeah, and I think it illustrates one of the hardest teachings in the scripture that we all think is sweet and nice.
And that looks very easy.
Like time and again.
Yeah.
The Bible talks about how we're supposed to, like in Romans 12, for example, I love the whole chapter because Paul says we had to let God transform us into a new person by changing the way we think. And then he gives multiple layers of examples of what that means and like heavy drama.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like he says later on in chapter 12 that you should bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. Imagine that. Bless those who persecute you. Someone's persecuting you and you bless them. What do we want to do all the time? Well, Jesus threw over tables once, so get over here. Let me throw your table.
Be careful. I might be carrying a knife because the disciples were told to carry a knife with them.
And then later on in that same chapter, do not repay anyone evil for evil. Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone as far as it is possible, and it depends on you. Live at peace with everyone. Don't take revenge. And if your enemy's hungry, feed them. If they're thirsty, give them something to drink. Don't overcome evil with evil, but overcome evil with good. These are counterintuitive things that we should exemplify. And sometimes they happen in the news and they have nothing to do with us.
There's more reasons why the internet feels like she shouldn't be sitting with them.
Well, yeah, and she had to respond to this. So
Yeah.
she waited a day, and then, I mean, whatever you think of Ellen, she has never shied away from responding to something like this. And she did one of her
But she always
monologues.
does it in such a funny way.
Right. She's so
I would
gracious.
love, can you imagine if you could do that in your marriage?
Oh, I know.
Oh,
Because she does it
man.
with this, like, there's, on the one hand, clear seriousness. And on the
Yes.
other, a lot of tongue-in-cheek humor
Yeah.
and
And keeps
self-deprecation.
it real light. Yeah. I
where you
love
can't
her.
help but finish and go, okay, fine, I'm not mad at you,
Yes.
even though I want to be. So here's in part what she said.
I'm friends with George Bush. In fact, I'm friends with a lot of people who don't share the same beliefs that I have. We're all different, and I think that we've forgotten that that's okay that we're all different. For instance, I wish people wouldn't wear fur. And I have, but just because I don't agree with someone on everything doesn't mean that I'm not going to be friends with them. When I say be kind to one another, I don't mean only the people that think the same way that you do. I mean be kind to everyone. Doesn't matter.
She didn't shy away. A lot of times these days, people will be like, I'm sorry, I'm actually not friends. And please
Right.
forgive me, internet. She's like, no way, I'm friends with this guy. I'm
sorry.
friends with people who are
Can I
different than
say
me.
I heard those words in kindergarten? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, you know, when you're in the playground, you can be friends with everyone. You can be nice to everyone. I mean, that's so
yeah.
basic.
Yeah.
When she said that, I'm like, are you serious? We've come this far that we need somebody to tell us. You can be kind. People don't have to agree with you. And then my thing is too, what was she supposed to do? So you come in, you walk into the suite, they tell you where you're gonna sit, you find out it's next to someone you disagree with. Are you supposed to be like, no, can you guys sit me somewhere else?
I mean, there's a number of tables there. I think flip at least one, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
wow. Oh
And
my goodness.
maybe you're at a point where you could actually flip your enemy out the window.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe pour soda, punch the former president, even though that you'd end up in jail. You know, it's all worth it, right?
Or in a less dramatic way, you could sit there all mad that you're sitting next to them.
Yeah, look
Then
grumpy.
The Twitter pictures will be like, oh yeah, I can understand why'd they sit her next to him? That would make complete sense.
Look very uncomfortable, maybe sweat a lot,
Yeah.
but grimace the entire time. And former President George W. Bush responded that he appreciated his friend Ellen DeGeneres' comments. His spokesperson said, quote, President and Mrs. Bush really enjoyed being with Ellen and Portia and appreciated Ellen's comments about respecting one another. They respect her. And so now I know somebody's got an email open and they're ready to write or they're about to text.
Brian.
What are you
darling.
doing on Moody Radio talking about Ellen DeGeneres? Don't you know she advocates for homosexuality and that's a sin? And okay, I know. And if you're really mad, ron.eastwood at moody.edu.
I know, that's right.
Yeah, bring it. I got
Ron.eastwood
plenty of room in my
at
inbox.
moody.edu. But I like to take a look at viral news stories and pick them up and take a look at them and say, what can I learn about this from the gospel? And the first part of me is kind of like, man, isn't it a bummer that I had to learn this from someone that many in the Christian faith would label as, quote, the enemy?
Yeah.
I'm not talking about George W. Bush. I'm talking about a homosexual advocate.
Right?
Who, as far as I know, makes no claims toward Christianity.
And if she did, we could say that at the same time, I mean, clearly the Bible says that homosexuality is wrong.
Right.
And so she's advocating for sinful behavior. I'm kind of like, whoa. The teaching is so simple, to love your enemy.
So simple.
And here we are. And we're not teaching it.
We're not teaching it. And if you look at a story like that and really in the quietness and secret times of your day, really look back, we're not walking it.
Right.
Because as much as we want to say it's simple, it really is not.
Not simple.
It's easy. It's not simple. Like you can do it. I'm just saying there's complexities to loving your enemy. It's more than, I'll sit over here, you sit over there. Hey, what's up? We're still cool, but I don't want to really like hang with you.
Oh, yeah.
It's more than that.
It's easy. I would say it's one of the easiest commandments to talk about because it sounds so great. Love your enemy. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can go on. I pulled a ton of passages on this. I mean, Jesus specifically says in Matthew 5, you've heard it said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven. He causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Are not even the tax collectors doing that? And if you greet only your people, what are you doing more than any others? Do not the pagans do that? Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect. I mean, I could keep giving you examples, but time and again, all throughout Scripture, over and over and over and over, that is the message sent. We'll go, yes, love your enemies, pray for those who persecute you. I do that. I love that. It's hard.
So someone texted and said, we're called to pray for them, and we should, and I do. And that's, I guess, kind of where I wanted to start going. That, to me, it's not easy, but it's easier than what I'm discovering loving your enemy is. So if we bring it to, these stories are like a jump off. You know, it's more than Ellen and Bush. It's like, man, what does that look like in my life? So if my neighbor is an atheist or a Muslim or living in whatever sin mostly outrages you, and it's very outspoken about it, because Ellen has a platform and it's, you know, she doesn't shy away from sharing her lifestyle. So let's say your neighbor is in that. Are we supposed to do more? Is the Bible calling, when he's saying love your enemy, is it more than, yeah, I love them, I don't hate them, and I pray for them every day?
Yeah. Hey, neighbor, love ya!
Yeah. So what does it look like?
In fact, I'd go as far as to say is, I think as an exercise, we got to think about this and talk about it. Mm-hmm. If your picture was taken and plastered all over the internet in a viral photo, who would be the person sitting next to you that would be your enemy?
And it's a picture with someone that I highly disagree with, or that stands in the total opposite of something that's close to home.
Of something perhaps that would, in your mind at least, define you.
Right. Who would that be? When I saw the story, that's what made me, that part of it is what made me reflect. So why people had an issue with Ellen and former President George Bush, part of it, besides, because you mentioned the war and all that, part of it is her stance in the LGBT community. And I know that for that community, for many of those people, many homosexuals, their preference is very much a part of how they identify who they are. It's a part of their identity. That's how they define it.
Yeah.
And so I know that not agreeing with them is not accepting who they are as a human. That's how they view it. So it made me kind of turn around and say, man, that's a different kind of quote unquote enemy. Made me think, who is that for me? And would I be able to really just hang with them? She pretty much put
and be
whatever.
Caught hanging with them.
Yeah, and be fine with that. And not only that, she said, yeah, we're friends. Friends. So one of the things she had said was, yeah, I'm friends with a lot of people that disagree. Like, for example, a lot of my friends wear fur. She's very big on animal cruelty and all that. She's like, I wish they wouldn't. But that's more disconnected. This is more personal. And so for me, who would that person be? So I know a lot of the listening family knows, and so I'll just refresh. I am not a U.S. citizen. I'm a permanent resident. I know. Isn't that's like a secret, huh? Yes, I'm a permanent resident. I've been here since I was 3. I've been a resident. I don't even remember not being a permanent resident. So what does that mean? It's permanent residency. I live legally in this country. I went to college. I got federal loans. I'm here.
Put down the phone. Don't call ICE.
Yeah,
we're fine.
Exactly.
They won't take her away.
So I am working toward my citizenship, but all my life I've been a permanent resident. And so all of my family on my side were immigrants, except, well, my sisters were born here, but, you know, we're Dominican. And a lot of my family still lives in Dominican Republic. Who I am, besides Christian, who, like the second, besides mom, like forget the like the family part. Who I am is very much Dominican. You know, like it's I speak Spanish. I cook Dominican food. My family's there. Like that's very much the essence of Janelle. There's something about, there's race, but there's something about nationality that's very much a part of who you are, especially when you tie in language, culture, music, you know, all of that. For example, I love watching Selena, and the fact that my girls are like in love with Selena. They're like, I hope they actually said this last weekend. Selena, the Mexican singer. So passing on the love of my culture to my kids is like amazing to me. So my girls are like, I hope she's in heaven because I just want to just hug her. And I'm like, that's so cool that because it's like somebody I grew up listening to and it's a part of my culture. So being that very much a part of who I am, the person sitting next to me whose people would be like, what? You're sitting next to this person? Would be like the national spokesperson for anti-immigration. Somebody who speaks out all the time to make sure we like stop immigration. There was a thing when I was in college, people pushing, especially in California, English-only laws, for example. There are times, growing up especially, now we live in a different time. I live in Northeast Ohio is just cool. But what I'm saying is growing up, there were spaces that my family would be in that speaking Spanish, it would bother them. You know, that's what I'm saying. There's another level. There's the race thing, but then there's the language and what we represent bothers people. So if you have the national spokesperson of like, no, I don't like this. We need to stop it. We need to get rid of immigration. That would be the person.
And you'd be having a good time.
No, you're asking, would I?
No, but I mean, to have the parallel.
Yeah, the parallel.
Of blessing. I mean,
Yes.
remember, Romans 12, bless those who persecute you.
Yeah.
It's not just tolerate.
Yeah.
Blessing is a whole different deal. You'd have to be laughing and smiling.
Yeah.
And friends.
And friends. And similar to Ellen, I can shut down some of my situation because I'm fluent in English. I've been educated here. I'm very much American. I have family members, cousins that I love. Remember when you were like, you went to Columbus for lunch? I mean, cousins that I went to Columbus for lunch like 2 weeks ago to hang with them.
A little
People
crazy, yeah.
I love that can't shut it down. You know, they're still learning English.
And they'd see you doing this.
They would see me doing this and be like, do you realize how how what they do impacts me? That would be the equivalent for me.
And that's what Jesus is asking you to do.
That's why I look at her and say, yeah, I can read over this and be like, oh, well, duh. I mean, I learned this in kindergarten. Y'all don't know this? We're supposed to love each other. But then when I paused and read it, and I was like, wait a minute. What would be the equivalent? That's where I'm like, no, it's more than I'll pray for you, dude, but you sit over here and I'll sit over there. Yeah, I love you, but I'm not trying to hang with you. Do you see, like loving your enemy?
It's
I don't
deeper.
think we do that a lot. Like, no, what does that look like?
Yeah.
I think we do a lot of what you said with the Noah story and the Samson story. You know, we kind of make it cartoonish. I think we've done that with the whole loving
we
your
haven't
enemy.
made it real. It's as if every believer right now, wherever you are, your car, your shower, whatever you're doing, you got to think, who's the person I hate the most? Like, who's the person who I just like, I see him. You see him and you're like, ugh. Even if they're famous. That's the person that's your enemy, and you're supposed to love them because the gospel calls you to do it. I mean, in an era of intense political partisanship and hatred in this, that would be the equivalent of if you're just average Joe, and let's just say you are very liberal. That would be you hanging out, having a great time with President Trump. Or if you're very conservative, that would be a picture of you hanging out with former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, having a great time.
Crazy. Isn't that weird that we think like, what? Like those two people.
That's what we're called to. That's the kind of radical love we're called to as Christians. And I think we like the idea of it, but I don't think we like it. And I don't think we do it.
No, we don't do it.
I don't do it.
I don't either.
I don't even seek it out very often. And if it happens, I'm thinking like, oh, what are people going to think of me if they see me? I mean, I work for Moody, for crying out loud. What if they see me here?
You can also feel, what would we talk about? Like, we got nothing in common. And I think we've defined people and reduced people to their opinions and their political stance or sound bites or Facebook posts. I am not proud to say that like weeks ago, I've unfollowed people because their posts bother me.
And so
but then looking back, I'm like, wow, I know I shouldn't be there, but I am.
I'm not criticizing you. What I'm saying is that isn't that yet another illustration in our lives of what it means to love our enemy? Like if we love our enemy, we're not going to disengage in social media with them. We're going to bless them.
But it's also what this Rhonda is saying. Why are sinners like Ellen DeGeneres considered our enemy?
Right.
And I think
she's like, who are we? We're sinners.
Yeah.
And theologically, you're right. But Jesus wouldn't have given us this teaching, and Paul wouldn't have brought it up multiple times, and John wouldn't have brought it up multiple times if, even though we all know we're sinners, we have to be reminded constantly that we're here and we're sinners and we need Jesus, and we should be so grateful and filled with joy that he lived a perfect life and died for our sins, and we don't deserve it, that we should go out to even our enemies because we should want them to get the same treatment that we did. That's the gospel itself. And yet we don't do it. We need to be reminded. All of us, I think, if we spend a minute and examine our lives, we're going to find an area where we're not loving our enemy. We're actually hating them. And we're not blessing them. We're actually wishing them ill. Mm-hmm. And we're blocking them or deleting them or calling them out or yelling at them or flipping their tables over or poking them with our swords like Ron said earlier.
But I like that because somebody could say, no, I mean, I don't block them or I don't wish them ill. But do we do life with them? And we're talking about Ellen, but Jesus did that.
Oh,
Jesus walked. That's actually one of the things that he was accused of doing. Like you're hanging with sinners.
Yeah. It's one of my favorite passages.
Scum of society at the time. So it's not just, don't delete them, y'all, or, and don't be angry. No, like, do you do life with them?
Oh, no, you're bringing up the because it goes even deeper than what we're saying now.
Yeah.
And we're saying that this is a powerful example in life of really how hard the teaching is of loving your enemy and praying for those who persecute you and blessing those who persecute you. And as Paul said in Romans 12, when your enemy's hungry, give them food. When they're thirsty, give them something to drink. Mm-hmm. And that's a quote from Proverbs.
Yeah.
So that really comes as this it's a totality of the scripture. We're taught this over and over and over again. And yet we're horrible at this.
Yeah, we are.
We like the idea, but we're horrible at it.
And I love that in her response, never once brought up policies. Right. Never once said, no, I still believe XYZ, or her relationship with someone who disagrees with her had nothing to do with his opinions. It's a way of separating your opinions and what you think from who you are. And we're not great at doing that.
Our society's terrible at it. It's getting worse by the day.
And I do that.
I
do,
I'm
too. Not proud of it. I am not.
And
then on Facebook, people put out their opinions. And so it has made me be like, oh my goodness, I thought I knew you. But it's like, I do know you. We can disagree and it's okay. Doesn't change who you are in a sense, because I should give people the benefit of the doubt. Even if we disagree, I should think you want the best for our country. If you've said you're my friend, you're still my friend. We just disagree.
But see, Jesus takes us even deeper than we've been already.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned earlier appropriately, we'll go, oh yeah, I love my enemies. I hate that guy, and I wave at him. Okay, well, that's sort of loving your enemy, but that's not what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
In this case, the example we're looking at is two social and political opposites, not only being photographed together and defending each other, but having a great time and declaring in public they're friends and being okay with that amidst all the vitriol, right? So that's like enjoying your enemy. Okay?
Yeah.
When you look at society in Jesus' time in the Middle East, the worst of the worst in Jewish society, if you were going to come up with, oh, you're just a tax collector. It's like the worst thing you can possibly be. Why? Because they were working for the occupying force.
Right.
The Romans were occupying Israel. And so they were the occupying force. And the way you made money as a tax collector is you collected tax on behalf of the Roman government, but they didn't give you a salary. The only way you make money is by charging higher than the percent tax that you're supposed to draw. And you can do whatever you want. And so you cheat people. That's how you make money.
Wow.
And so usually in the Bible, you'll hear, especially in the Gospels, tax collectors and other terrible sinners.
Yeah.
Because they're like chief among them. And it's not that Jesus was willing to just, as it says, you brought this up. So Jesus calls Matthew a tax collector. And then Matthew's like, oh, it's so cool. Come hang out with my friends. Invites him for dinner. And then the Pharisees saw it and they said to his disciples, why does your teacher eat with such scum? We have to remember, he didn't just have dinner. This isn't just a photo of Jesus laughing and eating with a tax collector. Think Ellen DeGeneres, George Bush. He called him to be his disciple. That's the context of this. He didn't just say, I'm willing to be your friend and hang out with you. He's saying, come, let's do life together. I want to disciple you. I want to love you and know you. That's another layer.
It brings up what Beverly is saying on a private message to Brian and Janelle on Facebook. She says, I think this is a great discussion. I remember when President Bush was running for president the first time and was in the debate stage against others in his party. A question was asked about who had the most impact in your life. He answered, Jesus Christ. The question was asked of him again, and he replied the same. I see him just living out his life as Christ would with his relationship with Ellen. The news also shows a clip of him as a guest on her show. I know Christ would sit next to Ellen with no problem. And I'm bringing this up because we bring up Ellen, and it's very powerful what she's doing. She just has a show and kind of shared her views. President Bush is another thing. He's the Christian, and in the video that she takes, he looks like he's having a blast, and her wife is sitting right next to her. What I'm saying is the opportunity that he's taking as a Christ follower to do life with her. It's like not an issue. He's not outraged. He's not, because it's also his side that
But I would flip this a little bit. Yeah, he's the one who professes Christ. And yet who was the one who was declaring to the world, look at my friend, I love my friend. We're having a great time together. And who was the one who did a long monologue? First, declaring, leave my friend alone. And this is okay that I'm doing this.
Because she was getting such vitriol from her friends, so to speak. They're not very friendly.
And so in this case, as hard as it is to swallow, the better Christ-like example in the situation is Ellen. I'm not saying anything. Of course I know homosexuality is wrong, and of course I know that she shouldn't do it.
It's wrong and it's sinful.
But what I'm saying is that this is the hard teaching. It's not just being next to them. It's truly loving them in a way that everyone will know.
So where's the line? I always want to kind of clarify. As we're like, no, yeah, fine. I'm saying that because I've been in circles that say we should be set apart and we shouldn't be like of the world, and the importance of who you hang with and the influence they have in your life, etc. So as a Christian, where's the line? What do we call it in hanging?
Think of it this way. What did Paul do? Got saved, didn't even go to Jerusalem, ran to the pagan world. Spent over a decade hanging out with non-Christian people who were at the time like Corinth. I mean, what they did? I mean, the ritual, we just talked about this in church recently. My pastor was talking about how when you were believing in pagan gods in Corinth and you were a pagan, and this is who Paul went to hang out with, you would go in, you would bring your animal, you would sacrifice your animal to this fake god, and then you would have sex with the temple prostitutes, and then you'd stretch and go home.
You sure the stretching was part of it?
I made that part up. I made that part up. I'm just, I'm assuming at some point you do that. And he went to them. So when we draw a line like, I don't know if I should be seen with so-and-so. Wow, what are we getting wrong here? But this is why I've printed off so many passages from the New Testament, and some of them reference the Old Testament, of loving your enemy in a radical way. It's like they keep trying to come up in the scriptures with a more radical way of describing this, and we still don't want to do it.
Because it's complicated in the sense of, I've heard people say, well, no, Jesus hung with the quote-unquote scum of the time with and not an agenda, but with a motive to share the gospel.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, we've talked on the show about the gospel shouldn't be an agenda. You shouldn't make people an agenda. If you're going to love them, you love them. Mm-hmm. So that means if they're like, no, I'm not interested in the gospel, you should still love them and still do life with them.
That's right.
But then you have the other camp that's like, no, you're just exposing yourself to temptation and influence of the world, and you should kind of dust your feet and move on if they're not interested.
But still be able to go, hey, leave my friend alone. I mean, this is the radical call of Christ that we, I think, fail at. And I'm grateful that I learned this lesson from Ellen.
Yeah.
And former President George W. Bush, because I need to be reminded of this. In fact, I think it's a good exercise for all of us today to pray and ask the Lord to reveal to us our enemies. Now, we think of that as an extreme word of like, the person that tried to kill you is your enemy. No, think about the person that when you see them or think about them, whether it's a person you know personally or they're on the news or whatever, that you get angry. Or you go, oh, I don't like that person. That's your enemy. And then look at what God expects of you from this. I'm convicted by it because I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. And we're called to do it. And the reason we're called to do it is the reason Moody Radio exists. Mm-hmm. Because when you truly are surrendering your life to Jesus in the midst of the gospel, that you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord, and you believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, that he paid the penalty for your sin and rose again, that you'd be so grateful for this gift. It's a free gift. You didn't deserve it. You deserve hell, and he died for you anyway. That you're so grateful for that. How could you not go love your enemy? Because you'd so want them to get the grace that you received, and you'd see them and go, man, if I can get saved, they can get saved.
Right.
That's what the gospel does to us. It doesn't make us bitter towards our enemies. It doesn't make us want our enemies to be hurt. It doesn't make us not want to be seen with our enemies. It does the opposite. That's the gospel. And if you need that in your life, I'm telling you, that's what the Christian life is supposed to look like. Don't worry about Christians you've seen somewhere not doing that. We're all sinners, and Christians make mistakes too. But that's the radical call of the gospel. Would you respond to it? If you've never done so, text the word Jesus to 440-546-2255. Text the word Jesus to 440-546-2255. We'll send you back a link, and it's going to get you to a simple website that tells you how to know Christ and how to be one of his followers. And those of us who already are following him, let this be a powerful reminder of the radical love of Christ and our call to do it.
Hey, hold up. Where are you going? You know you like your time with us. You want more. So look down, hit that button right there, subscribe, and you'll get updated episodes, and then you can hang some more.
And guess what? You can help us. How? A 5-star rating. Not 4, 3, 2, 1. No, 5.
You can also hang with us live weekdays 6 to 9 a.m. Interact with us, talk with us. Download the Moody Radio app.
Or at brianandjanelle.org.
And we don't put all this together all by ourselves. There's some great people behind all this production. We want to thank Ron Eastwood, Kelly Ryder, Paul Carter, Doug Hayner, and our awesome and fearless leader, Josue Villa.
And finally, this podcast is a production of Moody Radio in Cleveland, a ministry of Moody Bible Institute.
Well, Brian, that's a wrap.
Yep.